Hello and good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Hello Culture in Conversation as part of BBC Digital Cities Virtual. I'm Dr. Kirsty Fairclough, Reader in Screen Studies at the School of Digital Arts at Manchester Metropolitan University. So before March then this year, the closing of theatres and arts venues individually, let alone en masse, was completely unimaginable. And since then, the arts and culture sectors have been grappling with an ever-changing situation and often in innovative and of course, new ways. Manchester arts venue Home devised a project to take brand new live experiences from the homes of artists into the homes of their audiences. This series was called Homemakers, a set of commissions, brand new commissions, which invited theatre and live art makers to create new works at home for an audience who were also at home. To find out about the evolution of this project, I'm joined today by a wonderful panel. We have Dave Moutry, who is the Director and Chief Executive of Home, and Kevin Jameson, who is Home's Head of Programming, who looked after the Homemakers series, and poet, playwright and performer Hafsa Anila Bashir, whose Poetry Health Service was one of the commissioned pieces. Hello and welcome, everybody. There they are. So before we get started, we've just got a couple of bits of information that I just need to run through. We have the closed captions are available by clicking on the CC at the bottom of the screen. Now there is an option there to view the full transcript as well as displaying the scrolling subtitles. We will be recording this session, so you'll be able to watch it again on the Hello Culture website. So in terms of the format of today, we're going to be hearing from our keynote speakers for the first 40 minutes. And then in the last 20 minutes, we'll take questions from our lovely audience. So please do put your questions into the chat and we'll do our best to get through as many of them as we can. So let's start off. So we're going to go straight into hearing from Dave and Kevin about the Homemakers project. And we have a short clip that we're going to look at just now. Brilliant. I think we're going to hear from Dave first and then Kevin about the sort of evolution of the project and how you conceived it and how it actually operated it in practice.
Thanks, Kirsty. I'm going to take my video off so you can see the slides. So it's great to be here to talk about a series of projects I'm very proud of. On the 17th of March 2020, Home closed to the public. It became clear very early on that the closure wouldn't be for weeks. It was going to be longer. We estimated in the first instance that it would be July at the earliest before we would reopen. But in the end, it was the 4th of September, 169 days after closure. Kevin Jameson, who you're going to hear from shortly, started the process of rescheduling shows and cancelling others. We took the approach that artists and creatives should be paid, and we did that. However, we could see that we needed to keep in touch with our audiences for all sorts of reasons in terms of making sure we had a future to come back to, help artists and audiences get through lockdown and with some sense of connectedness and hope, support artists, creatives, technicians, and others in our sector by creating employment for them and helping them keep their brands alive, and also continue to do what we were funded for, which is to connect audiences with art. Jude Christian, our then Associate Director and Artistic Lead on this project, came to me with the idea for Homemakers. Following discussions with Kevin, she proposed this as an immediate and on the face of it, simple way to do this. We green-lit the project immediately. So Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Dave. We set up Homemakers on the 18th of March, which was about a week after we performed the last live event at home before lockdown. Like everyone else, we at home were reeling from the ongoing impact of COVID-19 around the world. And amongst the tragedy of lives lost, livelihoods jeopardised, and societies isolated, we searched for practical responses that the artistic community could make, not only to ensure employment for the freelance workforce, but also to celebrate and create live art in a moment where public gatherings were impossible. Homemakers were intended as a series of new commissions where we invited our favourite theatres and live art makers to create work at home for an audience who were also at home. This wasn't about pretending all theatre can be experienced online just as satisfactorily as in person. It was about demonstrating the innovation of artists who work in live performance by inviting them to respond to a specific performance context. It was about bringing contemporary theatre to audiences all over the world in all its form-flexing, mind-expanding, surprising, subversive brilliance. The artistic brief laid down for the commission by Jude Christian, our Associate Director, and myself was simple. It can be any length and take whatever form you like. Video, audio, text, visual, PowerPoint presentation, instructions for a game, a live stream performance, a personalised phone call, whatever you want to do, we'll figure out a way to make it happen to the best of our abilities. We also let the artists know that we didn't really know what we were doing either around this. It was brand new for all of us, and that we were learning how to make and showcase work during this extraordinary time. But we reassured them we were there every step of the way to support and figure it out together. And we engaged in this project with a mutual curiosity, patience, and cooperative nature. Each commission was £1,000, which approximately equated to 2 weeks' work for the artist. This wasn't a hard deadline, but it was important for us to let them know what we thought this would cover, so it was very clear. This money was allocated from Home's Response Fund, which had been set up in the wake of lockdown. This was to cover any other artists that they wanted to employ to help them make the work, or any other materials they needed as well. We left the decision to the artists on how they wanted to make the work. It was always intended as a quick response project, but we also understood everyone's situations had suddenly changed with lockdown. Childcare, mental health, illness, all had to be managed. So we were quite happy for the artists to work to a timescale that suited them. The idea was the project would run until the 31st of December. At that point, there was no end in sight for the lockdown, so we felt this was a prudent timescale to work to. We started with 5 initial home commission projects from Bryony Kimmings, Plasticast Theatre, Chris Thorpe and Yusra Wasama, Javad Alipur Company, and Ad Infinitum Theatre Company. We also knew that we didn't have the budget to work with as many artists as we would like, which meant we reached out to other venues and companies to see if they wanted to come on board as commissioning partners on the same financial terms and attitude to broaden the reach of our project and see more artists received commissions. And it was also important for us to ensure that all the works that were made were as accessible as possible. So we ensured that all commissioning partners also signed up to this pledge to ensure this was embedded into the project from the start. The commissioning partners also paid for all the access costs for all the projects, so that burden wasn't put onto the artist as well. As you can see from the slide, this is currently where the Homemakers project is at. We currently have 27 commissions. Yeah, thanks, Garrett. Yeah, 27 commissions. The 27 commissions have been made by 40 lead artists. There's been 190 contributing artists as part of that, a part of the 27 commissions. We currently have worked with 13 commissioning partners, and some commissioning partners have come on board for multiple Homemakers projects, and every single one is fully accessible where appropriate. We made Homemakers a ticketed event as well, as our plan was to split all the box office receipts 50-50 with the artist and the commissioning partner. This enabled the artist to continue to receive money throughout the year, and the commissioning partners could continue to use this revenue to commission more artists. All tickets were put out under pay what you can. We knew that free was always going to be a price point, as we wanted to make the work as accessible as possible. And the financial implications of the lockdown were really beginning to show. But we also knew that we didn't just want to make them free, as we wanted audiences to be aware of the value of the art being made. And just because suddenly it was digital didn't mean that it was easy for the artist to make the work. So we talked with each artist about a suggested price for their work to go alongside this. Usually they were falling in roughly the £5 or £10 kind of mark for suggested prices. But then we kind of took this a bit further again, and we also then implicated and put in a half price ticket point, if that sort of suggested price was still a stretch, but people felt they wanted to contribute some money. And we also added a double price. So on a £5 suggested ticket, we would have a £2.50 price point and a £20 price point. And then for the hell of it, we also threw in a £100 ticket, as we also knew there'd be some people that were keen to support companies over and above the suggested prices. So this resulted in a kind of 5 price point ticket for every event where relevant. And some events were free due to the nature of what the artist wanted to do. And also, we have had 7 people pay £100 for a Homemakers ticket experience so far. And as you can see on the slides, currently everything's through the home box office, ticketing wise, and we've done just over 3,000 tickets. In essence, this is actually about 23,399 to be precise, audience reach. That also is including the knock-ons of people watching in larger numbers at home, and also some of the free events that we've done that have had reach online. The revenue from the box office sales is just short of £9,500, but if you include all the commissioned money on top of that, it's generated just short of £34,000 for artists during this period of time. On the next slide, you can see some of the audience analysis that we've started to look at in terms of audiences and how many times they were accessing Homemakers. It was always our intention for people to experience multiple projects, enabling people to sample work from artists they don't know, and also to perhaps curate their own festivals at home by watching lots of different events in different ways. And also the international reach has been one of the biggest surprises for the artists. As you can see, currently over 33 countries people have accessed their work from. So this has allowed our artists through Homemakers to reach people from all over the world in a much shorter space of time than they normally would in the live arena. Without going over every single Homemakers project in detail, because we'd be here all day, I just wanted to give a few examples of the breadth of Homemakers and the breadth of the presentation styles the artists worked within. And you're going to hear from Hafsa very soon to talk in detail around the brilliant Poetry Health service which we made with the Oldham Coliseum. So we did some live Zoom events, which were fantastic. And these included James Monaghan's Let's Spend the Night Together, which you can see that image is taken from. But this was performed on the shortest night of the year and was a 9-hour live Zoom performance featuring over 20 University of Salford students as they contemplated the world they were about to graduate into. And also we worked with Tin Can Show on a manual of fantastic zoology. This was broadcast live from 5 different locations in India as they adapted the Book of Imaginary Beings. These events were fraught with danger due to the technology involved, and lots of rehearsals were had, but they were tremendously moving events, and it was great to kind of marry the live with the digital. We also saw artists wanting to reach out and make connections with audiences in ways that they hadn't previously. In Tell Me by Chris Thorpe and Yusra Wasama, they created the template of a game for people to play by whatever method. So this could be via Zoom, over the phone, and a socially distanced face-to-face. But it was a way for people to find out more about each other and how we are seen and felt in the world around us. And also Manchester's brilliant Plastercast Theatre created Homelands, which was a limited series of handwritten stories posted to people and encouraging them to read the story and then add their own ending by writing the next chapter themselves and sending it back to the company. Sound installations featured in numerous Homemakers, including the mesmerising Absent Tense from Joe Bannon, who made a 12-part album covering the first 12 weeks of lockdown. It's an intimate meditation on solitude, faith, loss, breath, and time passing. And Joe also made a brilliant accompanying book for the tracks as well to read along as you hear them. Manchester's Hidden Track created an amazing online game, How to Win, which was released in 3 parts over 3 months and allowed users of the game to decide what should happen next. And the company would make the next chapter based on the most popular answers. The mind-boggling game was inspired by 80s computer games and proved increasingly popular as the chapters were devised, with some quite heated exchanges online over which way the characters should go next. And finally, film was a popular medium for a lot of the Homemakers, with homes and houses becoming backdrops for the work. For many artists, this was the first time they were making films, so working in a medium they were not familiar with. But using a variety of cameras and mobile phones, managed to bring their individual theatrical styles to the screen. We saw earlier a clip from Chad Taylor's Lost Online, and this took inspiration from TikTok and Instagram Live to create a brand new dance piece using only his mobile phone. This work was co-commissioned by Z Arts in Manchester and shows how connected artists could be despite them all being locked down in their own homes. If you want to see the rest of the clip, shameless plug, do visit the Homemakers page. It's about a 5-minute long piece. We showed about a minute of it earlier. And also, before I finish, I just wanted to let you know that we still have Homemakers projects still to come. They are rolling through the entire year, and we still have work from people like Hot Brown Honey are making something from Australia as part of it, and the brilliant Stacey Makishi is doing a one-on-one phone call coming in November, and there's lots of others that will be rolling out, so do keep an eye on Home's website for that. Thanks for this, and obviously you can take questions later, so back to you, Kirsty.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Just the breadth and depth of work was just incredible. And before we dive into, because I've already got lots of questions, we're going to hear from one of the Homemakers commissions, which is Hafsa Anila Bashir, whose work was the Poetry Health Service. And that was your project that you conceived and was obviously part of the Homemakers project. So Hafsa, if you could tell us a little bit more about it. And I think we have a short clip also.
In March 2020, our lives as we knew it would change significantly. As the government brought the UK into lockdown, many of us tried to make sense of this strange and uneasy world we now found ourselves in. What was this virus that would necessitate social distancing and confine us to our homes in a way never seen before in our lifetime? That would go on to take the lives of so many loved ones, that would halt the world spinning on its axis and leave us suspended, waiting, caught in the liminal space that would demand new ways of connecting so we didn't lose each other. It was at this point, unable to create or write poetry, that I decided to read into the void every day at 2:30 p.m. on my Instagram account, in the hope to connect with people. Just one story, and poems. Poems that healed. Poems that moved me. Poems that would somehow stretch out and touch a listener so they knew they were not alone. That the void would answer back was unknown to me. Inviting listeners to write haikus, I witnessed a generous response of unity, People writing poetry for the people. What I initially thought was me reaching out into the void was actually a way for others to reach me. In doing so, strangers became family. Poetry knows no borders. 43 days later and counting, followers have contributed from across the world. A beautiful gathering of connection and creativity during this isolated and turbulent time. Here are our collective voices.
Thank you. So Hafsa, how does the Poetry Health Service work? Could you talk us through it?
Yeah, so the Poetry Health Service you can access by texting the word poetry to a mobile number, and you can also access it online. Because my main thinking behind that, I mean, that film says that it went on for 43 days, but actually I was reading for 75 days. And at the end of that, I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a phone line like the NHS 111 where people can phone up and actually receive poetry, depending on how they're feeling. And so you can either go onto the Poetry Health Service website and you press begin and you are led through a flowchart, a series of questions that you answer with colours only. And once that's done, you are prescribed a PDF, a poetry prescription, and you can also listen to the audio of that. And then you're invited to write us a haiku back after you've analysed your own feelings.
So what was the response then from the poets when you contacted them about this project?
The poets were extremely generous, which I think is something that we found over lockdown. Creatives have been generous, the public have been generous. And my initial call out, I think I had 45 poets straight away say that actually they want to donate a poem of theirs. But what I'm incredibly proud of is this service is literally poetry by the people for the people. There were people that were offering their words that don't consider themselves poets. They're emerging writers, they're secret writers in their notebooks, but they wanted to give me something that would bring benefit to others. So there's a real range of poets. I call them poets. There's a real range of poets on this service. It's something I'm really proud of.
So what's the response of users been like then?
The users, I mean, the figures show that we've had 3,600 visitors. And they've ranged from the UK, the US, Canada, New Zealand, Korea, Europe, the UAE, Trinidad, Singapore. I mean, it's gone further than I ever imagined it to. And what's been really lovely is having user feedback, people telling me how they're feeling once they've used it. And so just to read a couple, Pax Morrigan said, PHS is a brilliant idea. I was administered Love is a Luminous Insect at the Window by Martin Espeda. It was very unexpected to stop and think about love in the middle of a stressful day, an overwhelming month. A breath of fresh air, the audio recording was so soothing. And then we've got Helen McCormick who said, I'm writing from Liverpool and my haiku was inspired by Hannah Lara Haziam's The Brink. I had worked myself up into a bad mood before participating in the PHS and then being gifted this beautiful appeal to work myself back from the brink, which I interpreted as feelings of hopelessness and frustration, was exactly what I needed. Your project really helped me put things in perspective today.
Oh, wow. So how did you get involved then with the Homemakers kind of series, if you like, or how did it?
I was invited by Oldham Coliseum Theatre. They told me about the Homemakers project, and I realised that this is a way actually to bring that vision into being, to have poetry be given and distributed as far and wide as we can. And so I spoke to Coney headquarters in London, and I knew when I started this commission that actually it had to be a commission that went out for free for the people. And I knew that it was something that I would not make any money on. And I was happy with both those things because I knew that this was urgent and it was needed. And had I been given this as a project and it hadn't happened organically from the Insta Live readings, I probably would have made it very complicated. But actually it's worked out really well. It's a beautiful thing.
So how do you feel now about creating more digitally? Has it changed at all, or is it something that you really embrace now, given the current situation and ongoing situation?
I think asking any artist during lockdown to create work was a big ask. We were all processing ourselves, looking after our own mental health, as well as trying to create art that connected people. And I would say through this Homemakers project, it's really widened my perspective about what can be done. But also, we're still getting to grips of having this barrier between us in a way. Although it gives us access to the whole world, I still think there's nothing like us meeting in person. So it's trying to bridge both those things. And it's a learning journey that I've not really worked out the answers for yet. I think it's still very new.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a long way to go, isn't there? I'm still very much feeling our way through it. I'm going to bring Dave and Kevin in here to continue the conversation more generally about home and about homemakers and the future of kind of, what a hybrid experience for work might be. So, Dave, if I could come to you first, what does the future look like firstly for home generally, and then we'll talk about homemakers in a moment.
Well, as far as home's concerned, we're open. We had our first theatre performance. Well, we opened for cinema in September, beginning of September. Last week, we had our first live theatre performance with Young Identity, which interestingly was poetry. That was last Tuesday, I should say. We had first live music on Saturday night, the launch of the folk charts. And we had a show opened last night, which is Rash Dash, which is playing the rest of this week. There are still tickets available this evening, but it's sold out tomorrow. So people are coming and want to engage, but it's all taking place with level stage 4 protocols, which are socially distanced. So 20% capacity. And the challenge, there are two challenges going forward. One of them is how safe audiences feel, whether they're prepared to come out, and under this new tier 3 thing, whether or not going to the theatre, cinema, or to a gallery. We opened an exhibition on Friday, by the way. Whether that's classified as essential travel or not. I would argue that it is, but who knows? So what's going to happen in terms of audience perceptions is a challenge. But the other thing is, and this is where the Homemakers learning comes in for us significantly, is whether or not, is there going to be a circuit breaker nationwide lockdown again? What might happen? And that sort of level of uncertainty creates a level of, not only for our business, although we're a charity, we're still a business, we still have to earn money, but also the artists that we work with and all the creative teams that we work with. So going forward, Kevin's been doing a lot of work with our artists and technical teams about how we provide a blended offer. I think that's the term you use in higher education, is it blended? So that we can switch, we can pivot to online, or indeed offer online streamed work at the same time as the live work. And we've taken a lot of the principles around ticketing and affordability, etc., into this new way of moving things. So Rash Dash, who we've got in this week, we're doing our final testing on the systems for this, and then we'll be going more live with that as with the rest of the season. But if you're going to ask me about the technical challenges of that, Kevin's your person.
That's one for Kevin, isn't it?
It's one for Kevin.
Let's come to you then. So tell us a bit more about this kind of, blended approach to. It's so fascinating, isn't it, that we're even, having this conversation, but we are where we are, and obviously you're kind of working hard to accommodate the ever-changing situation.
Yeah, I think it's kind of really sort of shifted a lot of thinking, I think, as well, in terms of how you deliver a program, through an international pandemic, and ultimately how you can sort of support the artist and the creativity of the artist that you're working with. And I think, around the reopening of home, it's for us, it's very much, we have obviously the live program that Dave's mentioning that we have back available, which is brilliant. But also there are artists who don't want to perform right now live, and that's too risky for them, when absolutely, too right. And we have the Homemakers project, which is an ongoing kind of, it just keeps morphing, and more commissioning partners and artists want to kind of come on board. and we also have a kind of what we're kind of so classifying as then also a digital kind of offer as on top of that. So we're also working with artists such as Cheryl Martin from Manchester and Louise Orwin, who we were due to have shows from as part of our autumn season, but who are now reimagining that in a different way because they can't do it live. So, you know, and I think for us at the minute, we're also using the word digital as a kind of catch-all for not live, if that makes sense as well. So, you know, the Plasticast homelands that I mentioned were handwritten letters. So there's absolutely no digital aspect to that at all. But, you know, digital has kind of become a bit of a catch-all for not live, which is not a great term, but you know what I mean? That's just our shorthand that we're developing. So, and, you know, and I think the artists have also learned a lot around, and Hafs is a really good example, I think, of that as well, in terms of how technology works as well. I think, you know, some of the technology that Coney's developed around the Poetry Health Services is so, you know, complex. So it's kind of great for artists to have that learning curve and experience as well through this period of time, as well as the creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hafsa, could you tell us a little bit about that, the complex technology that Kevin's just referenced?
Well, I just had the ideas, trying to get that into fruition. I had no idea where to start. But Coney headquarters do, their speciality is they do a lot of interactive play. So he listened to what I had to say and then created this flowchart where you choose colours, and then that determines which poem you're going to receive. And I didn't know how to do any of that. So as an artist, I felt like I had to have a crash course very quickly, you know, even outside of the Homemakers project, in Zoom, in tech, in, you know, all sorts of technical aspects that is not my work. You know, I work with words and theatre. I don't have to deal with that side of things. So in a way, it's been a brilliant learning curve. And especially with the tech around the phone line, it's quite a magical thing where you text the number and you get a phone call back, and then you can respond. And to have that appear out of nowhere, to me, I'm very I love those kind of play activities, exploration. It's been a really good experience.
That's fantastic. I think we've got quite a few questions coming in already from the audience, so I'm going to go. I could carry on for quite a long time, but I think we need to get questions in from the audience. So we've got a question from Amy saying, I'm an art and film photographer and want to get into art and filmmaking and start making stuff over lockdown. Is there anything I can get involved with at home? I often go to home for the cinema and gallery. Would like to get involved with anything going on there. I don't know, that can be one for Kevin or Dave.
I'm happy to take that. We have quite well, there's two aspects to our work. There's a participation program, which is a engagement team run, but there's also a talent development team. There's a number of things that we do through that. So for an example of one of the programs there, which started work a couple of weeks ago, is that we're a participant in the National BFI Film Academy. So we do filmmaking, particularly with young people, and that's recruited now. But I think the thing to do would be to sign up for our engagement and talent development email bulletins, and the opportunities that come up are publicised through that.
That's great, thank you. I'm just trying to figure out where. Here we go. All right, the next question then is, I think this one is for, Kevin. Did any of the commissions have a non-digital participatory element for audiences? And this is from Nina, and she's saying that she thinks thinking around the barrier of digital poverty, which I think is a sector we're yet to consider.
Yes, we did. Yeah, that was very much kind of a thought process that ran through a lot of Homemakers and with the artists. So we have got projects in there that don't, like that's what I was saying earlier about that kind of using digital as a shorthand for events that aren't digital. So we do have projects in there and that don't rely on that. So you can phone our box office, you can have things sent to you, and there are things that are just purely through the post, through a phone call, which Stacey McKee is doing. So there was a lot of that we embedded into it because we were very well aware of the digital poverty that exists.
Thank you. There's now a question for Hafsa. Is there a particular poet's response submitted online that you found to be the most powerful over the lockdown period? And is there a country that is most popular in terms of the poet's responses?
So when you say poet's response, I mean, the poets that had donated, one of the poems that I felt that were most powerful and brought a lot of comfort to people was Roger Robinson's A Portable Paradise. But in terms of user responses and the poetry that I was receiving back, one of the wonderful things about the PHS is the haikus that were being sent back. And it was a real indication of where people are at the moment. Once they'd gone through this play and they'd received this poem, they're invited to sit for a little while, contemplating and write this haiku. And, they're just very small 3-line poems, but in that you can tell where people are and what comfort they want to offer to others. I mean, one of them, Jessica Wortley in Sunderland, writes, "Today is a car packed with holiday luggage. Slowly it breaks down." And another one was, recall who you were in the morning sunlight, fly back to your dawn." And that's by Valentina Locatelli in Bergamo, Italy. And it's inspired by my own poem that's also in the Poetry Health Service. But the country, I think that it's had quite an impact is the UK, obviously, and then the US, which really surprised me. I've had lots of haikus come from across the pond, and they're all in the haiku gallery that you can see.
Wonderful, thank you. Next question is for both Dave and Kevin. So this is, how likely in the present time do you think artists will perform through VR, virtual reality? The scope to introduce art through this technology can be challenging or might be an opportunity to mainstream further. With the pandemic, of course, all opportunities to reach the audience have to be taken into account. So yeah, a question about VR. What's your take on that currently?
Do you want me to jump in first, Kevin? Shall I go with that? There have been some interesting experiments. I saw something at the last International Festival where the RSC had been working with MIF using augmented reality rather than virtual reality around Shakespearean characters. That was very interesting. I think it may come. I think there's a way to go yet with the technology because it's still quite clunky. I think augmented reality is more likely than virtual in the short term. But ultimately, I keep coming back to the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, and that is that people like to be in the same space together, and they like to experience art in the same space together. I mean, yes, we like to experience art on our own sometimes, but also there's something about that collective experience of watching a film, or watching a piece of theatre, or being in a gallery at the same time as other people gasp or laugh or cry or smile, that is completely about the human experience, and we've missed that. I don't know whether anybody else experienced the same sort of emotional rush that I got walking back into work for the first time and bumping into people that I'd only seen over Zoom for 6 months. It's been a joy. I'm speaking to you from our office at the moment, and that in theory I could do my job working from home all the time, but I want to be in the same place as other people, and I think that's the case for art, and particularly theatre. Last Tuesday, being in the same room as an audience with talented young poets at Young Identity, doing their beautiful, angry poetry was very, very, very emotional, and it reminded me that I was alive. And I think other people experience the same thing. Sorry, a bit of a rant there, but I think we might do VR. I'm sure we will, and I'm sure it'll be interesting. But
yeah, I understand the but I think perhaps there will be a way to marry the two in some interesting ways. But I completely understand that emotional experience. I remember going back into home for the first time a few weeks ago, and it was very, very emotional experience. So I completely understand. Kevin, what do you think about the kind of VR and tech as a means of that use?
I think it's coming, and I think there are theatre companies and artists that are kind of really specialising and working in VR. I think the big thing at the moment is that the cost is very prohibitive in terms of the team that's needed to build VR to the standard that other companies are putting out. So, when you're kind of putting an individual artist up against a kind of huge multinational company that are also making VR experiences, people start to go, oh, it's not as good. So I think, you know, the team and the resources needed to make the VR, I think, is a big stumbling block at this time. So I think the more that that becomes easier to access, I think, for artists, I think people will explore it. I'm sort of seeing it also, I think it's kind of riding off what Dave's just said, I'm seeing artists use it as a bolt-on to what they might be doing rather than the main bulk of what they're doing, if that makes sense. So it's an explore the world of my show before or after, but you are still experiencing my kind of event in the live world or via film. So I think it's running around, but I think it will definitely come. And I'm seeing some good, you know, some really good storytelling kind of use of VR as well.
Yeah, someone's just commented actually about saying Hafsa said something very interesting. She works with words, and VR could do the job to involve people into sound. It's not only the visual factor that matters, but sound is another source that absorbs emotions. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Hafsa.
I mean, it's definitely, there's so many other routes of this that I really do want to go down, and hopefully with some extra funding, I'm going to be looking into how the PHS can be built on.
Great. And there's another question just coming for you, Hafsa, as well, saying, are there any ethical issues around offering poetry on prescription? I understand that you probably don't have involvement with the people that order poetry, but I'm interested in whether you also direct people in actual crises to crisis services.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when people do come onto that website, they know that we're not a medical organization, but there is something about poetry that can offer connection and can reach out through the darkness and, you know, make us feel less alone. And I think that that's what this service is. Having said that, knowing the emails that I'm receiving, it is something that when I said I hopefully will try and secure some more funding and build on to see whether there's something where people can be directed or a resources page that would speak to their mental health. So that is something that I am looking into.
Great. This one's for you, Kevin. This is from Andrew saying, with these artists that don't want to perform, have they ever recorded footage of themselves performing on a computer's webcam via Teams, for example?
Not for the shows that we haven't kind of reimagined, if that makes sense. So the two that I referenced, Cheryl Martin's, she's still shielding, so can't perform live, so has made her production of One Woman into a 14-minute film and worked remotely with a filmmaker on that. And Louise Alwyn has taken a slice of the show that she was going to perform and turned into an audio Foley experience looking at horror films and the kind of the tropes around females in horror films. So that's been the kind of thing, rather than it kind of just being a straight, you know, recording of it. But I'm seeing again a lot of kind of play readings on Zoom and, you know, Teams and that sort of stuff happening as well. But no, we've not kind of done any just straight to camera reading of the production.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a question for Dave here, also from Andrew, saying, Dave, do you have a favourite artist that you've worked with in your streaming and I think it's live work? And also, please, could you tell me on what testing work is that you mentioned? I'm not sure what that.
Okay, the favourite artist is an easy one in that they're all my favourites. It's like choosing between your children, which are your favourite children, I love all of the artists I work with. That's why I do it, and it would be really unfair of me to say I prefer one over another. I just can't do that. But the testing, what we're doing with Rash Dash, and Kevin will be able to speak more eloquently about this, is that we have a camera set up, three cameras and editing facilities, and we're looking at how best to live capture or actually live stream performance via. We tried a number of platforms. We think we've landed on one, but I won't say that is until we're actually definitely going to go with it. and it's about the best way to do that in a way which does justice to the artist's work, both in terms of the way that it's edited and the way that it's served. But I don't know, Kevin might want to add more to that. But the thing is that we want to try it out before we offer it out there, and ask people to offer to pay money for it.
Yeah, of course. Kevin, can you comment on that a little further?
Yeah, it's another strand of what we're trying. So I was saying we've kind of got, live, we've got the Homemakers, we've got the sort of specifically made for digital projects they're working on. We're now also trying to kind of bring live streaming on stream as well for the season ahead, because again, we are well aware that we have a socially distanced auditorium, which means that only about 100 people can come and see the work. So that really limits it for artists. And again, we're also well aware there are a lot of audiences who are shielding and nervous about going back into a live arena. So we really want to kind of open up the accessibility of that. As Dave says, we have the kit, we're kind of testing it. We tested it last week, we're testing it this week. So hopefully quite soon, I don't want to put any kind of jinx on a date around that, but we'll be able to kind of announce a series of live streams of the live events that we're doing. But actually a lot of the kind of thinking and attitude, I guess, around that, we've really learned so much from Homemakers, in terms of, pricing and accessibility, and, all of that is really kind of funneling into the live stream. So it feels like, in a way, the Homemakers project was a huge test or kind of useful exercise for live streaming, as well as obviously the Homemakers project. So it's been a kind of double win.
Yeah.
Can I just come back on that, Kirsty? The other thing is that when we're not MT Live, we're not the Royal Opera House. So this isn't 16 cameras and a broadcast team. This is a much more lo-fi way of doing it. And that's why we want to make sure we get it right. So at least we're doing the greatest justice we can to the artist's work. That's an important thing for us. And we can make it as accessible as we can make it. But there's also lots of other things we've had to learn about to do with rights, how we pay artists, etc., in this sort of field. So the experiment is much more than simply the broadcast. It's also all of the stuff that goes on behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what has the feedback been like? Because I remember watching in the early, literally as it was, came online, and I found it such a comfort to know that there's people out there making work. I find it an incredibly comforting thing. I don't know what the general feedback has been like, Kevin, if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely echoes. Kind of, we've had some small test audiences, obviously, experiencing it from both ends. And like Dave says, it's important that we test. Does the technology work? Can you see something? And does it feel right? And does it do justice to kind of what the event is as well? And like Dave says, the implications around NT Live is what immediately everyone jumps to, and we're very much not nowhere near that level of what they do. But I think there is that sense that people can share in the communality of, someone sat in home watching it, and you're sat at home and also watching it. So that shared experience comes through, and it's the next best thing that we can do if you can't be there. So I think that the sense that also for the audience and for the artist that there is an audiences at home, I think is a real comfort as well. Actually, it certainly has been on the first two events we've done.
Yeah, thank you. Got time for a couple more questions that's coming through thick and fast here. Oh, this one's for you, Kevin. You mentioned income streams. You use the pay what you decide model as well as an actual ticket cost. Could you go into a little bit more detail about the response, and is that model sustainable?
Yeah, I think we use pay what you can. So it was kind of a 5 price points that we had. So it would be kind of 0, free, half price, a suggested price, double price, and £100. That was a big experience in and of itself, but there are plenty of venues out there that have been kind of doing that model, the pay what you can, pay what you decide models, like Slung Low in Leeds and the Arc in Stockton have been doing that for kind of 12 to 18 months. So this is there's nothing new that we've invented for Homemakers, and it's worked very well for them. I think where it really hits is the accessibility factor. So it almost kind of makes people be able to choose the price points of where they want to be. And as I say, yes, most people actually pay the suggested price so far. quickly followed by free, but that's kind of in a way not surprising. And that's why we put in the double and the £100 was just to kind of go, let's just see what might come from this. And there are a lot paying that as well, and I think when you have kind of real big fans of artists and people that feel they have the kind of income or money that they feel is they can invest in that, I think that's great for the artists as well, and shows a kind of differing level of investment from audiences to artists, rather than just going, it's £12, pay or don't pay. It allows people to make that choice, and I think it becomes a much more interesting dialogue between audiences and artists, I think, for that as well. So yeah.
Thank you. And just one last question, and this is to all three of you. The question is, what do you see the future experience as? What will it look like through lockdown, social distancing, and hopefully post-pandemic? What does the hybrid experience look like? Dave, do you want to take that one first?
What the hybrid experience look like? Watch this space. We're going to try and find out. But what you can guarantee is that artists like Hafsa and the other artists that we work with will find new ways of doing things. We'll find exciting ways of doing things, and things that scare the pants off us in terms of how we actually deal with them. But that's one of the great things about working with artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Hafsa, what's your view on the immediate future?
I was agreeing with Dave. We're in this special moment, I think, where anything can happen. There's so much possibility, and when we're given limitations, that's when the most beautiful work comes. So I would say what Dave's saying, watch his space. We're all still learning, and the ideas will come.
Thank you. Kevin, anything to add?
No, not really. I agree entirely. And I think that's been the beauty and joy of Homemakers for me, is that I think, to be honest, like me and Jude back in March, we thought everyone's just going to make films. Like that, we sort of like just thought that's kind of where it's going to go. Everyone's going to get the mobile, make a short film. That's kind of going to be the way we go. And then what you realize is that artists are artists for a reason, because they're incredibly, amazingly creative. And they take that brief of like, what do you always want to do? And they run with it and, absolutely deliver on it. And, Hafsa's is just, one of the best examples of that. And, that's what's been the beauty, and the beauty from us to go, oh, okay, you want to do that? Okay, right. Yeah, no idea actually right now how you do that, but leave it with us, or we can connect you with someone who does know, or, that kind of thing. And it's been a sort of journey of discovery for all of us at home as well as the artists. And I never cease to be amazed by, the artistry from the people that we work with. It's just truly, it's been a joy and an honor to do Homemakers from that point of view, really.
Absolutely. Therein lies the joy. And my goodness, we all need some of that right now. Thank you so much. You've been absolutely wonderful to talk to. And, it's been a really fascinating conversation. So much more to say, of course. So thank you to all three of you for taking part in this today. Also, thanks to Lara and Chris, our programme curators for Hello Culture and BBC Academy. This is part of the Digital Cities virtual programme. And this morning has been in partnership with the School of Digital Arts, our SODA, at Manchester Metropolitan University, which opens in September 2021. So do check out our website, and make sure you also check out the Digital Cities virtual website for more information about their masterclasses happening later in the week. And there's more from Hello Culture in 1 hour, when I'll be finding out more about how the teams from Stan's CAF, Serendipity, and the Lyric Theatre Belfast approach storytelling during lockdown. And there's a link, I think, in the chat there to book. So thanks again, everyone, and take care.